for drama, and he's going to come flying in. You know, when you make games that star Kim Kardashian and now Katy Perry, you have to come in with some Hollywood style. So I guess we can look for that in a minute. But thanks, Dave. We do have a great panel, and if anybody knows Chris and sees him outside, wave him in, get him in here. I know the schedule is running a little bit off, but maybe he's having a coffee or something. So we have a great panel. We have a diverse set of companies, which is exciting. We also have really the app economy, some of the leaders of the app economy out here today. And what we thought we'd talk about, and I'd like to actually propose something. I don't know if has any of these panels gotten around to asking questions during the process? Has there been any question Q&A from the audience? Would you guys like the ability to ask some questions during the panel? If you have a question of what's going on, instead of just having us drone on and talk and talk and talk, do you want to be able to raise your hand and just ask a question? Do we have a microphone out there that we can give these guys? Okay, so we're going to have mics. If you want to ask, I'm going to stand up because this is difficult to look at you guys. If you want to ask questions during the panel, here comes Chris. Let's give a hand to Chris there for making the panel.
It's all these ad networks that pitch you out there. Sorry.
Was that how you got started with Katy Perry? Is that where we saw you?
Maybe.
That saw the news on Glue? Maybe you can start off. Let's start off with Chris. Tell us what happened with Glue and Katy Perry and why you guys did that. Let's go right to it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Akhaven, President of Publishing at Glue Mobile. So Katy Perry came about, obviously, after the success of the Kim game. We had a lot of inbound inquiries, folks interested in working with Glue. And we wanted to be very selective and make sure we found somebody that was an exceptionally good fit for the engines we have, and somebody that could tap into a new audience and really engage that audience. And so that was really over the course of probably a few months of discussion with her and her management team. We all felt like it was a good hit, a good fit. So we're really excited about that one.
Congratulations on that. Anybody else do anything with celebrities, endorsement, IP-based stuff in there? Brian, music space, what's going on there?
New in the space, we just did a custom, or really a streaming event for Jack White on Friday for Pandora listeners. So sort of built out a custom channel for
streaming event on Pandora. What does that look like?
It's basically it was the Jack White concert from broadcast from the East Coast on Friday night. So from a streaming perspective, it provided those users that had opted in to participate in that channel sort of an experience unlike we've been able to really do from a Pandora perspective. So I think you can see, or you will see, some of these happening over the coming weeks, months, quarters as we bring on more artists. There's a lot of focus right now.
So that was entirely your first time?
First time. I mean, I think there's a big focus, as everybody knows, where there's lots happening in music, and there's lots of euphoria around what's happening with streaming, and Taylor Swift's not here, but she's there, and so what we're really trying to do is work with the artist community, with the labels, and really try to bring something back to them, whether that's data or insights about the users that are listening to them, or to our clients or our customers, and that's sort of unique opportunities to engage with the artists that they're excited about.
And how did that event go? Being a first trial, what do you?
I mean, we haven't seen all the data or the metrics yet, and there'll be some forthcoming announcements around sort of that and other things to follow. So
great. We were chatting outside a little bit earlier, Michele and Nanea, about native advertising and how the term native is being used in the app economy and as a way to drive interesting ad models. I wonder if you guys could tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you've been doing, what's working, what's exciting, and then what you might see on the horizon. Michele, we'll start with you.
Sure, yeah. Well, for us, native sort of is a buzzword right now that covers a lot of things. For us, that means an ad that's contextually relevant and somehow makes the user's experience better in some way. And so for us, we feel like if we're going to bring a brand into our world, it should make the fan experience better, and in turn, there's a halo effect on the brand, and it's kind of win-win all the way around. So for us, that means anything from incentivizing video, rewarding video, which will unlock specific content or give a player a new life. We've all kind of seen that kind of thing. We try to make the front end of that as organic as possible and really work with each of, you'll never see an offer wall in our games. We work with each of the game producers to figure out what's appropriate and what works well in the game. In Angry Birds Star Wars, for example, there is a character you get once a day. He gets dropped into carbonite, frozen for 8 hours. You can either pay to melt him immediately, or you can watch a brand video. So that's nice. But then what we think is really exciting is doing things that are more integrated and in a bigger way. So in we were just talking about in our Angry Birds Go game, which is Kart Racer, there's a power-up that you can purchase that if you're racing your cart and crashing into a wall, normally it would end the game right there at your experience. If you have this power-up, it fixes it on the fly, you keep on going. Well, that's just car insurance. So we brought it to State Farm, and that is brought to you by State Farm. We were able to give that to millions of players for free, and to the point where we actually have fans saying my favorite story is the State Farm client was at a party, and someone came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I saw that integration you did with Angry Birds. It's amazing." My son came up to me and said, "Mom, do we have State Farm insurance?" And so, that's just a win all the way around. Fans love it. The brand got a tremendous amount of engagement, won some awards and all that. So for us, I think that's what we want to do more of. That's what native means.
So that's incredibly contextual. The user appreciated it. The brand that worked with you felt that the results were above normal.
Yeah,
How
there was a ton of engagement. I mean, billions of brand impressions, hundreds of millions of brand engagements, so everyone was happy.
Will they track it all the way down to new registrations for State Farm or interest level in State Farm? Is that do they
it's more of a branding play,
branding, okay.
but certainly something that could be done. So.
Nice, that's really interesting. Well, Dave, we're going to ask you in a second a little bit about the data behind that stuff and what you see. But Nanea, tell us what you're doing. Maybe give a little background on your background, what you've done.
It's pretty diverse.
Well, let's hear a little background and then tell us what you're doing today.
We started JamDap back in 1999, making mobile WAP multiplayer games, and the art was ASCII characters. And I think, when you think about native, we had come from, many of the JamDap people had come from Activision. And trying to think about the native experience of being connected as a device, as opposed to trying to put Madden on the phone back in the day, which we also tried to do. And so just the concept of being able to play against another person on your device was so innovative in and of itself. And I think that's where we have to continuously evolve what our concept of native really means. So after JamDap, we were acquired by EA, and I was at EA for 5 years, about 4 years.
That's when we met. That's actually when you and I met a while ago.
That's right, and laid a lot of the infrastructure there for global identity, microtransactions, the global wallet, getting them more data-driven, and a lot of the stuff. I think a lot of that plumbing is still in place there. And then I went to Gaikai and did cloud gaming there. Sony acquired them. Was at Machinima for about 2 years, and we did a very innovative influencer campaign, which I think you should talk about.
Okay.
You talk about
come back to that, for sure.
Celebrities. When we were at Machinima, we would see if you got the 17-year-old kid to tweet about, registering for a free-to-play game, we saw one tweet drive 50,000 registrations. When we go to Snoop Dogg and ask him to do it, we saw very little traction. So it's that layering of the authenticity, which also makes it very native to the audience and what's going to resonate with them. When we launched our app on Xbox, it wasn't okay for us to run Olive Garden ads
right.
in the Machinima app. So we had to go and work with our brand partners to really kind of get a little edgier and more native to our audience and their brand voice.
Very vocal audience.
Oh,
right?
they're very vocal because they'll go on all the social networks and slam your Olive Garden ad that they just watched. So it is immediate, just crap storm. And so I think that, just thinking about video content in a way that is editorial in and of itself or topical, the brands should get a little more targeted and focused in their communication. And they don't need to be overproduced. That was the thing you and I really found with that need for speed activation.
Natural stuff, really.
Yeah,
really
Dave sent out, gave us 2,000 copies of Need for Speed about 2 to 3 weeks before the game dropped.
Right.
And we sent it out to influencers all over the world. And they weren't like the PewDiePies of the world. They were, you know, the 15-year-old kid in Brazil who had 10,000 followers. And they just started flooding YouTube and Twitter with all these videos.
Right.
And, you know, you've got quite a bit of traction on it. I think we generated about 25 million views, and at a time when Call of Duty and Halo were also coming out. It was great.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah,
so tell us what you're doing right now.
Well, now I'm at TextPlus, which is an OTT messaging app, and it's also, I'm working with the Jammed App founders again. And in the messaging space, you know, the thing that's really powerful about it is it's an application that a user launches 20 to 30 times a day. And we have people on our service who have been there for 2-3 years, even longer. And so that becomes a really powerful avenue for discovery and content discovery. And I think we haven't done the best job in the past of running ads. I think it's interfered with the user experience. And in our new application, we're getting ready to kind of fix that. But I'm really looking at ways to evolve that it's almost like the new portal, as it were. If you look at what China is doing, in China, what WeChat's doing there, it is the portal. You know, the users are reading 5-6 articles, news articles a day through WeChat. They're paying for stuff. They're discovering relationships with retailers. And so it's really, I think that's the biggest opportunity, what interested me to this space. And then you overlay it with the dynamic of the address book being the most relevant social network to the end user, right? And the people on my favorites list are 5 people I'm messaging and calling all day long. I have the most influence over them. They want to know what I'm doing, who I'm doing it with, and what content I'm engaged with. So that's the area that fascinated me to come work in that space again.
Great, interesting. Yeah. Speaking of mobile data, knowing about your users, David Pokress, who heads up publisher relationships for AdColony, a pioneer in the mobile video space, recently acquired by a larger company. What can you tell us about the trends in the space and the importance of data as it relates to success of marketing and advertising, and a little bit about, to give us the understanding of the breadth of what you guys do across, you know, different categories of applications. Is it just games, or is it, you know,
yeah.
what is it you guys are doing?
So AdColony is, we're focused on video and exclusively delivering video monetization and the flip side, user acquisition. But it's not limited to games. We're on many premium apps, including Getting Mail Online, you know, and many others. But I focus mostly in the game space. And you know, I think we're beginning to see a shift where data has always obviously played a very important role in the space. But when it comes to advertising and monetization, I will say that people tend to ignore the data, right? So there's a lot of people who have these hypotheses that advertising is bad, it's bad for user engagement, it's bad at many levels, we don't want to do it. Or we're making a ton of money from our, you know, from our users doing our purchase. Why would I want to risk it with advertising? And you know, and we were having this conversation earlier, and I'm just gonna, you know, let's go controversial early, and I'm gonna say that people need to abandon these hypotheses that are really outdated, and they need to look at the data, and not just look at the data when they want to look at the data. Really take a hard look at it, and pay attention to what it's saying, which is, you know, it's okay, right? And I think that you know, I've been in gaming for a long time. Spent a lot of my career at Activision, you know, working on console games, and what was this?
It's like the Activision Mafia up here.
But it's a very monolithic viewpoint of how to make money. And then it was exciting when multiplayer and kind of online content, download content came on to drive additional revenue sources. The great thing about, you know, I think mobile is there's lots of different ways to make money, except we have to be open to wanting to do that. And I feel like a lot of people in this industry just aren't open. And I think we need to change that, because the opportunity's there, and it's a way, I think as Michele said, you can reward the user. The user can feel good about engaging with advertising. You just have to be smart and good about it. And that's why we like working with Rovio as a partner, because they do advertising in a good way, right? And it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you're saying, David. And actually, over the last 2 years, we've been able to basically double ad revenue at Glue, both in percentage terms and more than double in actual. Last quarter we reported we did over 12 million in ad revenue, so it's a really big part of our business. And so I remember when I first joined the company, there was like a lot of resistance to introducing ads into the games. And case study after case study, when we actually looked at the data, what we found is that being more and more aggressive with ads actually was not having any negative impact to any KPI, whether that be LTV, retention, etc. So over time, we've kind of educated the organization, and now people are actually, including our studio heads, are actually very aggressive about how they implement ads into their games and kind of pushing that as a really big revenue opportunity.
Well, we saw an interesting data point just last week that we have the ability in our app to view ads, view videos, and then you earn calling minutes. And the kids, it's not true. Kids do like to talk on the phone. They just don't like to pay for calling. But we do free calling Thursday nights. We call it Booty Call Thursday. 5 p.m. they're taking out. So we found though.
How'd you come up with that idea?
Unfortunately, it was my idea. But we had.
It's
we
Thursday.
noticed.
Today it is Thursday.
It is Thursday. That's right. We noticed that kids were coming into the app and just earning credits, and they weren't even using the credits. And just saw this last week and went, wow, they just want to be rewarded. And they're watching videos, they're watching brand videos. So obviously we're going to look at, with all the game DNA we have in our company, how do we get in there and kind of evolve that in a non-gaming environment, but add those mechanics to it. And I think it's becoming more and more relevant.
Are you guys global? Is it North American only?
We're primarily North American. We just launched in the UK. We're going to start scaling more aggressively worldwide.
Because there are markets like India, for example. I know that the currency of advertising pays for minutes, and that's an emerging trend.
It's a currency in our economy right now.
So does anybody, before we go on to the next topic, does anybody want to ask, go a level deeper on the notion of whether having ads in your game is good for the player experience and age progression, or whether we have some concerns or questions about that? Anyone want to dig deeper into that, or are you guys happy to move on? Show of hands. Dig in a little more, understand what's going on in the dynamic, or move on? What's the question? All right.
Quick question.
Go for it.
What does the panel think the right mix of revenue, in-app purchase versus monetization should be for a well-rounded gaming?
Great, I'll repeat that. What does the panel think is the right mix of in-app purchase, transactions, e-commerce versus advertising? So that's a great question, and I think Chris will start with you.
Sure. So for us, we've actually kind of leveled this out around 80-20 on a net basis. About 20% of our revenue comes from advertising, which actually works out really well because we spend about 20% of our net revenue on UA. So the two things kind of offset each other. And we've gotten ad revenue at a very healthy level where we feel like that's probably the right level for us to be at.
Michele?
I'd say for us, what we're seeing is it really varies by game. So game by game, we sit down with the producers and we work out a plan, an ads plan versus in-app purchases, and then we figure out, what's working well, where are we seeing more money coming from, and then does it make sense to put more resources against, more in-app purchase developments, or does it make sense to put resources towards more interesting ad placements, where are we seeing the money? So I think it really varies. I mean, we've got some games that are mostly ad support, and we've got some games that are 100% IAP.
Yeah, I should mention that actually we also have games that are closer to 40-50% ad revenue, so we see the same variance across our portfolio as well.
So some of us have been in the ad business for longer in the room and the panel than we want to admit. And when the internet first came online, there was AOL, and they were shipping out billions of discs. The perception was that dollars would just flood out of TV into internet advertising. What happened over the last, AOL's got to be 20 some odd years old, is it took a long time for dollars really just in the last 2 years have started to migrate in really meaningful form from television to the internet. And the internet's picked up a lot of money from magazines, even radio, newspapers, but the TV dollars are really just starting to flow as videos coming online. Can we talk a little bit about the quality of advertising, the type of advertising we're seeing in mobile, and do we see that transition of brand advertising from other media forms moving into mobile, maybe quicker than it did? It took over a decade really for the numbers to really impact internet advertising in terms of coming out of true television. Are we seeing something different in mobile because of the behavior, because of the amount of time spent on mobile devices is so way and beyond anything anybody ever imagined? Is there something else going on there? And Brian, let's start with you. You guys have a couple hundred radio sellers, but you're also doing video. Tell us about your mix and then what you see going on in the space.
I mean, the mix is really driven behind, increasing the revenue per hour of listening, right? Pandora as a radio service. There is a big focus on radio because it's a $15 billion market, right? So you're right in the analogy of the TV dollars coming. We're really going after the radio dollars.
Yeah.
Video is interesting. It's fascinating. It's the probably most requested product from a seller's perspective, and I don't know if that's because of the ease of sale or because there's additional dollars that could be gained there. I think, like everyone, we're trying to look at the data and understand from a user and retention perspective, what is the overall user experience and how is it impacted by the user seeing a video. I mean, the great thing about sort of the Pandora advertising experience is it's all user generated from the fact that you don't see an ad until you're actually interacting with the app itself. So the data becomes really critical in understanding, what's the right mix of audio, video, and display, depending upon if they're mobile or display or a mobile or desktop user.
Can you tell us about what's the model called that allows you to watch a video ad and get added?
So it's it's a new product that some of you may have seen or may have seen some articles about it. It's really what we're calling sort of sponsor listening, and right now it's really sort of allowing the user to engage in a video or a video-like experience, and then by doing that, we're not showing, we're not providing advertising for the subsequent hour, right? So where this goes, there's lots of hypotheses right now. I think from a product perspective, we'd like to be able to offer these type of engagements or interactions across the board. But it's still early. We need to figure out the economics behind it. Does that allow or does that compete with? Audio CPMs are still pretty robust when you compare it to a traditional sort of display. So do we want to not have, no audio ads for an hour if we're, depending upon what the cost per engagement or cost per completed view backs into from a video perspective. So it's early. The indications are that the users actually like it, which is always good from an advertising perspective. So we'd like to be able to sort of push this out at scale across all of the Pandora products, but it's not.
And I think
it's
it's
going to be a while.
tough for the brands to stay on top of all of these custom formats without standardization. And I was looking at some of the OTT messaging apps, and Snapchat just launched their Discover feature, and half the stuff in there is really old or blank, and because you can't stay on top of it, and if you're going across multiple channels, I just think it's hard. And we found out, Michele, a lot of people would try us out, but we always value basically success on repeat.
Right.
Repeat
that is
business.
Key advertising is repeat.
Right.
Renewals and growth in the model.
Right. You didn't repeat as much with us.
Wasn't me. I promise. Now, Super Bowl Sunday, Liam Neeson, Kate Upton. So it's a little bit hard to say that ads for games aren't ads. I mean, these guys are spending $4.5 million for a 30-second spot during the Super Bowl with high production video assets. I'd like to hear from the gaming guys on the panel. We tend to think of brand advertising, you think of Coke and Pepsi and Nike and Unilever and Procter & Gamble, but are games that are advertising in your games right now, are they advertisers, are they direct response, are they a combination? How do you guys look at it, and what do you think about that, the trend? Are Procter & Gamble and Unilever going to crowd those guys out over time, or is the direct response game and app advertising here to stay?
I think it's all blending together. Actually, just looking at Supercell as an example, it's pretty incredible. If you look back I think end of 2013 is when they started to do the top of funnel sort of brand marketing, Subway ads, TV, etc. According to AdColony, they were doing about 500K a day in the US before they started that. They went big on that stuff, and now the revenue ramp is like 1.5 million a day. And there's no other explanation for that ramp than the top of funnel activity. And so what I suspect is you see not only the brand lift, but that backs out all the way down the funnel into now your CTRs on your performance campaigns are higher, your CPIs are lower, your tutorial completes are higher. It's kind of a halo effect across the entire funnel. So for me, I kind of see all these worlds blending together in a big way.
And Dave, you guys may have trafficked more game ads than anybody, or almost anybody, up until maybe the launch of Facebook direct response. So tell us what you're seeing, what your thoughts are on brand advertising, and how the mix looks like it's heading.
Yeah, no, the mix, we're certainly seeing greater adoption by Madison Avenue, by the big brands. And they're getting comfortable, just like as an industry, we have to get comfortable with the idea that ads are okay. Brands are getting comfortable with the idea that games are okay. They want to be where their people, the consumers are. They have to be on mobile, and but they're on games, and that can be confusing for the brands sometimes. They're not sure what that environment is like. They understand TV, but mobile engagement they're less certain about. So there's a lot of education going on. We have a direct sales force for our brand business, as well as a direct sales force for user acquisition and performance, two separate groups, and the brand team spends a lot of time educating. Now, you mentioned online and the shift from that online and TV had. I feel like today the advantage is that it's easy to understand how everything's complementary. So a lot of people did they bought ads on the Super Bowl, and they also bought ads on our mobile network to complement each other at the same time. Coordinated buys. Brands and marketers are getting smarter about how everything complements each other. I don't think that brand is going to crowd out the game advertisers anytime soon. Supply has certainly grown as people I feel like have realized that video advertising on a mobile device can make you a lot of money, and it can be a good experience for your user. So supply, AdColony is not the only player out there, unfortunately, but definitely it's gotten more competitive, and hey look, that's a testament to what video is on the device, and a lot of that's due to the technology. When video started on mobile devices, it was a crappy user experience. That's what AdColony changed, right? And that's the quality of the video made it more TV-like. Brands understand TV; they're going to understand TV on a mobile device, and so you grow.
I think with monetization, though, we also have to talk about some of the CRM activities you have to focus on in order to retain your customer. And so, I think there's this massive cliff that happens after 30 days in games, especially. What are people on the panel doing? I'd be interested in knowing. I have an e-commerce background before I started working in games, and have found it so useful, as it relates to using email and email marketing to get the user back in to your experience, trying to identify and detect through data churn, even before it's happening, so that we can start to predict based on some of the behavior patterns, we can start to grab them before they leave.
Is there a point at which you flip the switch, Michele or Chris, where you say, okay, this user is playing a game and we're going to show them stuff from this game? And then is there a moment where you say, well, they don't seem to want more stuff from this game, let's show them stuff from our other games? And you do that for a while, and then at some moment you say, they don't seem to be that interested in stuff from other games, let's show them stuff from somebody else's game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think,
does that sound a little crazy to anybody, that you're potentially going down that path, or does that make sense to the room?
If you want to monetize them in different stages based on their...
Yeah, I think, segmentation is not just about, are you a payer, are you not a payer, it's also about where are you in the life cycle of this game. Right? Are you just starting to play, you're engaged, okay, maybe we don't want to show you ads that are considered interruptive, but we'll show you the rewarded stuff. Okay, now we think maybe you're about to churn out, do we give you special offers in that game? Or cross-promote one of our other games? Or what point do you just say, maybe it's time to turn the dial up a little bit on say, interstitial ads, because we think you're sort of on your way out.
Right.
Yeah, when we were at EA, we put bigger data infrastructure where we could look at game telemetry. And we were talking about this outside. When free-to-play first came out, people would look at 2% are monetizing. How do we get 3% to monetize? And then the other 97%, we looked at them as blood-sucking leeches. But when you actually looked at the data more granularly, Dave could be such a good player, you'd never get a dime out of him in microtransactions because he had the skills and the powers to just deal death. But the 10 people playing with Dave were spending like crazy to keep up with him. So if you don't work on retaining Dave and he leaves, there's this
So there's a network impact of a user, not just the monetary value they bring to the table.
That's right. The value and there was a company in Germany, Gameforge, I don't even know, are they still around?
I think so.
They were really good at this very thing, and they would reward those users and turn them into community managers and give them admin access, and they really understood that mechanic.
So you're kind of getting back to the influencer. You're really on this
I think it's the
theme. You think it happens in game and out of the game?
It is because you think about it. You're going to spend $5 to $7 acquiring a customer now in mobile, like a good quality customer, not one that's just incentivized. And so they have to add value when they come in, whether it's bringing in 2 more. Like I'm always tracking how many invites per user a new customer sends out. Because that I can, look at my cost of customer acquisition and factor that in, And
so do you build cohorts of the right type of people that can are viral and can bring a lot of people in?
But it required beefing up our data environment, for sure, because that takes a lot of processing power. And you don't need it every day, though that's the other thing. So you can design your data differently. But yes, most definitely, because if I'm just looking at it in a rolled up manner, I'm not getting the insight I need to actually make really good product decisions.
I was going to add that I think a good market to look at as an example here is the Chinese MMO market.
Yep.
Those games have become really powerful in understanding how do you actually get a lot of value from the non-paying users, how do you get those users engaged, and ultimately getting the paying users to spend more and treating it as a full ecosystem rather than just looking at, oh, here's my 2% spenders, I only care about them.
Right.
Anybody
we
have
were talking about Amazon, right?
I believe, does anybody remember, I said this outside like I know what I'm talking about. Do you guys remember like when Amazon first launched, there was a moment where they identified their higher paying spending users and they charged them more for products and they tested charging lower prices for people who weren't spending money? You guys remember that? A little bit of negative press that happened. It came and went pretty quickly.
I remember.
Yeah, so I think it did happen, and it's obviously what the intent you're saying is treat your best users the best you can, not necessarily.
Well, you don't understand the real value that they could be adding, or even a future is like that too. Data's king.
Yeah, data is interesting. Before we talk about data and advertising and sort of this trend towards programmatic, I'm going to take a little pause here and say, does anybody have any burning questions they want to have addressed before we move on to programmatic? Quiet audience out here. Everybody's happy?
Who's still awake, actually? 5 hands.
Is this working for you guys? Are you enjoying this? Is this a good one? Okay, all right. Let's keep going then. We'll keep going on the track that we're on. So programmatic. It is the buzzword on Madison Avenue. If you're in New York, every meeting is a programmatic meeting now. I'm having a lot of programmatic meetings. They're very exciting. It's when you hook up one system to another system and they start talking to each other and you get people out of the way, although it still seems to involve a lot of humans and a lot of back and forth discussion. But the promise of programmatic advertising is that you can hook up supply and demand sources, agree on price, and start to have things flow on a consistent basis as opposed to the typical advertising model of at least direct sales, which is an RFP goes out to 100 people, 100 companies, 95 respond on time, and 10 get picked, and you do it all over and over again. It's highly inefficient. The promise of programmatic is that a lot like a trading desk environment, it sort of eliminates a lot of friction and leads to optimal pricing and essentially real-time bidding at scale. Are you guys doing anything in programmatic? Where do you see it going? Do you think it's an opportunity for the app economy? Is it happening in just display advertising? Do you see it coming into video? And let's start with Pandora because you guys are the biggest volume advertising player on the space today.
I'd say we're all in on programmatic, but it's still early. In the efficiency or the promise of programmatic on the front end, as you just alluded to, in terms of removing selling, is sort of exacerbated on the back end by the challenges of, wiring up these deals and having somebody like looking at a terminal and understanding, depending upon if you're running 2, 10, 100 deals, like what's actually happening, how are they transacting? There's a lot of work that needs to be done to support, getting a programmatic effort off the ground. The dollars are starting to flow, right? And I think that goes back to the point that we talked about earlier. If you're going to make a commitment to programmatic or just direct selling, like you have to make a commitment. There's advertiser concerns around viewability, audience verification. So if you want to bring your game or your messaging app or your music service to Madison Avenue, like you have to bring some data, and that data has to be not just your own data about how great you think you are, but verified data from somebody else that attests to how good you are, or they're not likely to open up those programmatic channels for those dollars to flow. So I think we see every day more and more of the interest and more of the questions are coming around programmatic. We're betting big on it in this year and over the next 5 years, but it's still the Wild West. It's still early days.
I would echo that. I would say the same thing. We're having conversations every day about it. The actual dollars flowing, getting the tech to work. There's still some work to be done there. So, but I think for us, that for display or video, that's going to be a great solution. But then on the other side of the house, because of the type of properties we have, we definitely do a lot of customized sponsorships, and we're trying to make those scalable and dynamic and trafficable. But I don't see that going into a programmatic environment, so I think we're still going to have, so for example, we have clients that we're having both conversations with. So clients that say, I want to do, a custom game episode, and I want to put, one of your characters on my box of cereal or whatever. But then also, I want to buy video at, volume. And
that's the same partner, but multiple components to what they want. Can we go into that a little bit deeper?
You want the sponsorship dollars, right? Because the margins that you get there far exceed its order of magnitude compared to what you're going to get, from a scalable programmatic offering, whether it's display or video, and those will be there. But you're exactly right, and the challenges on doing something unique, it's still a ways off before what's unique for you is it's never going to be unique for anybody else, or it's not unique, right?
Yeah. Right. And so I think that's we can have the same conversation with the same company, and so okay, so you want to run your video dollars programmatically? Well, we have 1.5 billion video impressions a month, so we can do that, and we can connect the pipes, and I think still those are mostly still conversations. I'm not seeing a ton of mobile video dollars flowing programmatically yet, but I think back half of the year, I think for sure. But that same person also wants to do something that's a little bit more, take their innovation budget or something like that, and do something that's a little bit more innovative.
The famous innovation budget, the deadly innovation budget. We'll kill everybody working on it to get it. But
so we like to say, we can work with you no matter which direction.
Tell us a little bit about, so you mentioned a program, retail cereal boxes. Give us an example of the kind of cutting edge stuff that you've done that's worked really well, that's been great for your company, great for the partner, and great for your players. Give us your best example.
Best example. I mean, our best example are probably partnerships that we've done that are more of a marketing partnerships. Mm-hmm. So, for example, our partnership with NASA. That's one that's sort of probably the nearest to our heart. It started with NASA tweeting to us about, hey, we hear you're going to send birds and pigs into space. We're pretty good at sending stuff into space. We should talk. And we did. And then we signed, I forget what it's called, the Something Space Act, and we're partners now. And we have not only done multiple levels in games that are NASA themed, that drive folks to learn more about NASA's initiatives, whether it be Mars rover or whatever, but then we also have done location-based actual attractions at the Kennedy Space Center, for example. So really, those partnerships have been digital, but also real world. And then also we launched, that was Gilbert Space, we actually launched it from the International Space Station with an astronaut talking about it, and sort of talking about the physics behind the game, and that got, 100-something million views on YouTube.
Did you guys put a value against all that marketing? Did you look at it and say, okay, the marketing equivalent value if we'd spent this money on our own was X? Did you look at that kind of level of detail on it?
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers off the top of my head, but it was huge, right? And just recently we did something with the World Wildlife Federation, which is a partner of ours, And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the pangolin, but it's a very endangered species. And so they had a Save the Pangolins campaign going on. So we said, you know what, we'll take our Angry Birds Friends game, we'll do a tournament around this to help raise awareness. Like, you know, most people don't know anything about the pangolin. And we actually
Sorry, you're me confused with the pangolin here?
It's a scaly anteater is the best kind of description of it.
Learned something new today.
But we did a campaign with Prince William, who is a big supporter of the World Wildlife Foundation, and so he did a video where he was playing the Angry Birds Friends, that special Save the Pangolins tournament, and so we got a tremendous amount of views on that and press on that.
Celebrity endorsement.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff I think is great because that's fun for our fans. It raises awareness of an issue, or it's an educational issue, but it also drives a tremendous amount of engagement in our game. So those kind of partnerships, I think, are fantastic.
Chris, what do you think about that? You guys have gotten some great marketing benefit out of some of your endorsements and people you work with, I guess, on product design and stuff. Have you seen the impact on your? Does that allow you guys to market less, or maybe spend less money marketing because you've got this tremendous awareness coming out of the brand?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at Kim, I mean, she's been a huge ally in driving downloads to that game, whether it's through her social channels, through plugging in every interview she does. So she's been phenomenal in that regard. And as a result, we see lower CPI, higher organic downloads, etc. One example I can share from a kind of custom brand integration we've done in a game is in our Racing Rivals game. We actually did a cool sponsorship with a tire label called Nito Tires. So they're the official sponsor of the game. They have, they're kind of presented as the premium tire in the game for your cars, and we have custom challenges from the brand. And so, I mean, I think it's a good example of something that was very authentic to the game, that added value to the user experience to have a real car, tire brand in there, and obviously they love the results as well.
Nice. So I'm going to go for a quick round the horn prediction for what's going to happen big in your space this year, this calendar year. So let's start with Michele, and we'll go across the table here. What big, exciting thing are you expecting out of the mobile gaming space this year? Or the gaming space? You can go that way. If you want to go to the NASA and the penguin space, go for it. But what's big? What do you think is going to happen?
I think for us, the huge focus this year is on video, right? We're definitely rotating out of a lot of the static executions we had in our older games. There are no banners in any of our games.
Is that a global thing or a North American thing?
That is a global thing.
Okay.
So we're going heavy on video. We also have a direct-to-consumer video channel that the entry points live within all of our games. So you'll see.
I'm a little surprised by that. Are you saying in the rest of the world there's good enough video fill and market for that?
I would say certainly some markets are better than others.
Okay.
We have a tremendous business in Europe as well, growing Asia. I think there's certainly some markets that we're not quite there yet. But I think if you look at the eCPM differentials on banners versus videos, for example, we can show a lot fewer ads.
Right.
And make a lot more
better
money
for the player
doing
experience.
it. Better for the player experience. I think for us, we're going to keep going down that route. And also our sort of custom sponsorships, moving them to a place where they're much more dynamic and scalable and trackable from an ad server.
Great. Yeah, Nia Reeves, what's on the docket? Give us your vision.
Well, WhatsApp just announced that their daily message volume has surpassed SMS, and I think that we'll see major disruption in voice as well in telco services and more innovation there. It's something we're looking at very closely. And in the communication app space, I think you will see them evolve because of the traction and the frequency of engagement into portals and start to take a lot of the lion's share the audience attention away from more established portals out there.
Like who? Come on, put you on the spot. You don't want to say. She's too nice.
I've gotten into too many too much trouble on these things. But yeah, I think the Yahoos and the
we got her to say something. We got her.
Yeah, I think you'll see anybody who has 300, 700 million users a day coming into their application has some real ability.
Real power. Yeah.